Okay, we're now moving into a second round for 5 minutes questions, starting with Mr. Lloyd.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I couldn't agree more with what Mr. Moffat said there at the end, like we shouldn't be choosing winners or losers. The future of my community and communities in places like Alberta, Northern BC, Saskatchewan, yes, will lie with hydrogen, but also with low carbon fossil fuels. And something that sort of disturbs me listening to all the witnesses is that hasn't been one mention of low carbon fossil fuels. We're talking about biogas, hydrogen, renewable fuels. But where's the talk about our low carbon fossil fuels? Why have those been excluded from the formula here? Mr. Moffat?
Sure. So I think the simple reason is that we kind of riffed off the notional subject matter, which is focused on clean fuels. And so, but the government's approach to climate change absolutely envisages a future for oil and gas, and absolutely has a number of measures in place to work with provinces, work with academia, and work with industry.
Do you think fossil fuels can never be clean fuels or cannot be clean fuels?
Well, the challenge will be to achieve life cycle net zero emissions. And so we
have great examples of oil companies in Saskatchewan, for example, Whitecap Resources. It's actually a net negative carbon producer because they sequester so much carbon that they sequester more carbon in their wells than the oil that they produce would burn. Why aren't we championing our net zero or net negative producers like those companies?
So I think I guess there's a couple of issues there. One is what measures have we put in place, and the other is kind of what's the overall government rhetoric. And I won't get into the kind of the political rhetoric.
Does the 1.5 billion Clean Fuels Fund include low carbon fossil fuels? Like, is there any plan to include that in the $1.5 billion Clean Fuel Fund?
I'll let Ms. Johnson answer that, but the CCUS incentive is
important.
Is the Net Zero Accelerator has a major focus on enabling decarbonization projects by oil and gas producers. The blended finance measure is intended to be available to oil and gas producers. So there are, and we are spending a lot of time working with provinces, including like on a bilateral basis, including with the provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan, trying to develop joint measures.
Thanks, Mr. Moffat. Maybe we'll move on to Ms. Johnson now to finish answering the question that you suggested. Thanks, Mr. Moffat.
Thanks very much. So as envisioned, the Low Carbon Fuels Fund is not talking about low carbon oil and gas, but there are other measures, as Mr. Moffat was suggesting, such as carbon capture and storage. There's also measures like the Emissions Reduction Fund and others that are focused on reducing the carbon intensity of the oil and gas sector.
But we just said we don't want to choose winners and losers. Why is this policy, if we can have oil and gas like Whitecap Resources have, Sturgeon Refinery in my riding, in less than a year of operation has already sequestered over a megaton of carbon dioxide. Why is the government choosing winners and losers here by excluding low carbon oil and gas from the clean fuel, $1.5 billion clean fuel fund?
It comes down to growing a source of fuels that is low carbon intensity. And so I think that is the definition that's we've been moving forward with the Clean Fuels Fund.
But like we've seen in cases like Whitecap Resources with the production of oil and gas, we've seen with the Sturgeon Refinery and the refinery aspect, we've seen that these companies are actually net negative producing, like they're sequestering more carbon than they're emitting. So they're a net negative producer. So shouldn't that be like the holy grail here for the government funding on this clean fuel fund?
Well, and I think what I would say to that is that there are other tools like the Net Zero Accelerator, which has $8 billion in it. There are other tools. The Clean Fuels Fund is not the only tool in the kit that is going to support the transition and support emissions reduction. So I'm not sure that it is just about one tool in the kit.
Yeah, I'm just so worried that, we have this great resource in our country. We have the best carbon capture like in the world. Like we've invested billions of dollars into developing this. It's sequestering carbon right now. Yes, we see that there's been a tax credit in the budget, but I'm just concerned that we are picking winners and losers here, and we're excluding our low carbon oil and gas industry, which I think has a very strong future in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd.